Hi everybody, my name is Will. I'm with Donovan Pottery, where we make handmade objects inspired by fantasy used to fuel your reality. And today we're interviewing Don Marshall. You may know him as the Obscure Lord of the Rings Facts Guy on TikTok, where we were tagged hundreds of times together through the community, which eventually led to a collaborative mug project. And today we're going to hear Don's story, his inspirations, the most obscure Lord of the Rings fact. Stay tuned and we'll cover that and so much more. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching this interview with Don Marshall, the Obscure Lord of the Rings Facts Guy on TikTok. We're here to talk about our collaborative mug project, as well as hear Don's story, inspiration, and find out who is the true Obscure Lord of the Rings Fact Master. That'll be later.
I will happily pass the crown to pretty much anybody that wants it at this point. There are so many obscure facts that even I don't know. But thank you so much for having me. This is delightful, and it occurs to me now I don't have my mug, so give me 13 seconds and I'll be double fisting when I return. Hang on.
Yes, please do. Oh, it's made the collector shelf?
I'll fill them with iced tea in a moment.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that they've made the collector shelf.
Oh yeah, of course. These are, I mean, I get that it's handmade and beautifully crafted and all of that, but like overall, solid mug, like sturdy. Yeah. All right. So, what do you want to do first?
Well, first I want to hear more about your story before TikTok. So we
Oh
got
gosh.
connected because of the hundreds of people tagging back and forth when I started making Lord of the Rings mugs. And
Sorry about
that's when
that,
I
by the way.
discovered you. That's okay. It's created a wonderful thing.
It really has. That's kind of the beauty of TikTok and why I think I've gravitated so much towards that community and that platform. Uh, Before TikTok, though, I was in a sort of similar field, but for very different reasons. So I was a journalism major in college and spent the better part of my junior and senior year either working freelance or being part of a news radio station in the city I lived in, and just kind of trying to find my footing as the creator I am now. Like you can literally track the steps as I often have of like, all right, cool, journalism, great, and then I go out to get my first journalism job. I'm like, ooh, this is a lot because there's so much going on, and I'm doing sports and I'm doing weather, and oh, they asked you to anchor this weekend, and by the way, can you be a producer and also a writer, and just any number of odd jobs with a camera or audio or tech I worked. And then the pandemic happened and I got burnt out because I was working overnights for about 2 years. So I transitioned into the private sector, and like I I remember very vividly having a conversation with my wife about not feeling creatively fulfilled anymore, and how um the creation of the story that I um made every day at work as a journalist was not replaced by anything. I was just sitting there, not really stretching those creative muscles that I really want to. Um, and then along comes this app, and I make a video, and it bombs horribly. And then I over the course of the next like year make a bunch more, and they all fail horribly. And then I shared my Lord of the Rings expertise after stitching. By the way, stitching improperly. I didn't even do it properly because the stitch function wasn't working on my phone. So I took a screenshot. Like, you've probably seen this guy. It is a buddy of mine now, Heston, who has a video about Gandalf racing Frodo, and he calls himself an 8,000-year-old wizard. And I'm like, that's not how old Gandalf is. I did the math, and I really loved doing that. It was like, actually, it was Thanksgiving night of 2020, in the midst of deep into the pandemic, and I said, oh, this is kind of fun. Hang on, I know other obscure facts. I can make more videos with that. And by the time I stopped, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I had made 6 videos, and I woke up to 10,000 followers. So there's a lot there.
So that's some positive reinforcement.
Yeah, it is very uh, rewarding to see all of the hard work that I did as a reporter pay off almost instantly.
Mhm.
And there is sort of that serotonin release of like, oh my God, they really like me. But then sort of the problem with that, and why I think so many people don't sort of keep their virality or don't go viral, is they don't interact with the community that they've sort of unintentionally created.
Mhm.
Like and I've been very fortunate that the Lord of the Rings community has sort of let me stay for as long as I have.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of become a beacon of fact checking for all Lord of the Rings online content.
I will say I wouldn't fact checking is one thing, but I having done actual fact checking like as the reporter, it's way more fun to do it now. Unfortunately, the back half of that is the people that I'm fact checking typically have lots and lots of followers who get very angry when I pull the biggest actually in the world and just be like, that's actually not it's not really real. So it's been fun though. It's been fun sort of going back and forth, figuring it all out.
Where did your obscure Lord of the Rings fact knowledge come from? Is that deep
Um, I
personal
just
history?
I saw The Lord of the Rings growing up as a kid. I've watched the movies for the first time. My mom actually summarized the books for me and my sister at the breakfast table every morning, because like the books were a little too complicated for I think I was like 9 or 10, and she kind of knew I would like it because I grew up reading, Brian Jacques, the Redwall series, Del Toro's Quest, Chronicles of Narnia, all of those like children's adventure books that lead to the Lord of the Rings and then lead to modern, fantasy as we know it. Um, but I just found my the way my mom told the story was so cool that I fell in love with it. And then she's like, guess what? They're making a movie. So I watched the extended edition DVD at my house. And I was actually lucky enough to see Return of the King in theaters. And I don't think my obsession ever really stopped. It just kind of waxed and waned in varying levels of obsession. And I do say obsession because it kind of has been the one constant thing throughout my teens and my 20s and now into my 30s.
And it's really cool how you can take that childhood love and then turn it into something that makes a real communal impact through an
Yeah.
app online today. It's wild.
It is, and it's so cool that that exists now because I feel as though we've kind of circled back around the wagon with um like creating communities which were, yeah, I mean you were on the internet in the early 2000s, right? I mean
Mhm.
there were forums and places to go, and you had your Neopets, and the complete opposite end of the spectrum you had your 4chans, and then there's Tumblr and the people in Super Hulock and all of these like fandom spaces. And then I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but I there definitely felt like a fracturing where like everything was Marvel, everything was Star Wars. And now I see like these smaller communities, the TTRPG communities, the old childhood books and TV shows. Someone was doing a Redwall rewatch like a couple of months ago as a group on TikTok somewhere, or
That's
maybe it was
fantastic.
Instagram. But yeah, and I love that. It's like these little communities are allowing people to sort of share their passion, and I've been fortunate enough to make it a part of my income and a part of my life for the last 3 years. It's been really cool.
I'm really interested by how that, like the opportunities that come from being a part of TikTok and having a community look towards you for escapism or entertainment or
Mm,
comedy.
mhm.
It's such an unfamiliar or unconventional like career path or work path.
Yeah.
Do you find that like, do you love that, or has it been a real learning curve to like adjust?
Learning curve for sure. I still work a 9 to 5 job so I can have health insurance
Mm.
in this late stage capitalistic version of America that we live in. But uh, I've sort of slowly graduated to the idea that like I can do my job 9 to 5 and work this in the evenings, or I use, for example, like I'm on my lunch break right now as we record this, and just taking those moments to like appreciate what you have, because like this is absolutely me only speaking for myself, but I bet there are a bunch of other people out there that are thinking, man, if I was just a little bit famous, like not famous enough to get on Dancing with the Stars, but if I just had like a bunch of people listening to what I say about this thing I really like, I could do something with it. And I think I've always felt that to an extent. Like, you know, we stand in front of the mirror giving the Oscar speeches or the
Mm.
Grammy speeches, something like that. But truly in this instance, I found myself to be able to like I did prioritize this. And one of the things that I always talk about is my neurodivergency and sort of my hyperfixations. I found myself hyperfixating on figuring out how to beat the TikTok algorithm so I could grow a community.
Mm.
Because it was cool hanging out with other people that like Lord of the Rings because I didn't really have that when I was young. I was I was the weird kid, which should come as a surprise to no one, but like no one really talked to me about Lord of the Rings growing up. So like I always attribute it to the great quote, "Be who you needed when you were younger." And I've been very fortunate that so many people have gravitated towards that mindset because I'm thrilled to be able to be that person to some extent to them and with them too.
That's really cool. And I
Yeah.
love that even just pursuing opportunities like this and what you said about that person who thinks that they don't need to be hyper famous. They just want enough of a platform to be able to
Mhm.
do what they want and make a living for themselves in the
Yeah.
place where around the thing that interests them or they're passionate about. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's not as hard as I think a lot of people make it out to be, but I think a big reason for that is because there's this focus on like instantly making it profitable and then figuring out how to build the community along the way. Whereas
Mm.
I was fortunate enough to sort of have the community push on me, but growing that community, I think, is the most important part. I often made it a point back when I was still streaming regularly on Twitch, which I think for the most part I kind of still am, but not like intensely.
Mm.
And I would always try and raid the people who have like 30 or 40 viewers at any point because there's a certain level of like production quality that you can have on Twitch streams that if you can just give that next person that next boost, it's like the rising tide lifts all ships. You can share that audience without the fear of like I think them turning on you or like thinking that oh, I like this guy better, so I'll just watch this guy. Like as long as you can build a community and like be a part of it, it makes it that much easier to be able to share, uh, you know, uh, the things you're passionate about and make some money off of it, which is kind of nice to be able to fund the next project.
Yeah, so if there was somebody who's listening to you in your audience who's thinking, I've I've seen Don's videos. I see all these other people on social media talking about the thing that they like, and somehow they seem to be, after time, like making some sort of income to whatever level on it. What would you tell them to encourage them to start?
Oh gosh. Starting is such a weird sort of notion, especially with social media, because like 90% of it, to me at least, 90% of it is just um I think the phrase that I want to use from like a Gen Z standpoint is like lean into the cringe. Maybe that's too millennial. I don't know. But like the idea of that thing that sort of made you embarrassed. Like I never shared my Lord of the Rings stuff growing up. But then I started sharing it online and being really excited about a thing I was excited for. But I had always kept that very reserved. So like I think as much of a cliche as it might be, uh the advice I give is be yourself, but with a caveat, because being yourself involves quite a lot of looking inward and being like, why did that make me uncomfortable? Why do these people gravitate to my content? And I'm fortunate. Again, I keep saying that I'm fortunate because I never want to take this for granted that like the truly authentic, enthusiastic version of me loves Lord of the Rings, really wants to get excited about new Peter Jackson movies or season 2 of The Rings of Power or action figures or video games that come out. And I think people want a share of that joy. And I think that's sort of the place where social media needs to evolve now. We've had a lot of negativity. So I would say focus on what makes you happy and then share that happiness. It will be uncomfortable though. It will be deeply uncomfortable and you will probably want to quit a lot of times because I did. I wanted to be like a speed rapper on TikTok. Back when Hamilton was out, I was like speed rapping Guns and Ships and duetting everybody and all of the instrumentals, and none of it was going well. I kind of look like Lin-Manuel Miranda, so I thought that's what I had going for me.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out it just wasn't, as interesting, and there were other people doing it better. But it's really important not to get discouraged, because a lot of it is timing. I tried for a year before I had a video even go remotely viral, and then I went for it. But like that whole year, I was trying to figure out, okay, am I book talk? Am I COVID news talk? Do I try and revitalize the journalism stuff? So just sort of trial and error, being yourself to an uncomfortable point of like deep inward searching and finding that joy, I think, is the best advice I can give.
I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's enough negativity in the world, starting from a happy place in an authentic place of this is what makes me tick.
Yeah, and I think being a voice of, I guess, not necessarily reason, because I don't consider myself a voice of reason by any means. I am on one side of the spectrum or the other in terms of reactions to most things, but always keeping in mind that like the authenticity is what makes it feel real to real people. Like reminding people that there is someone behind the camera and not just, hey, everybody, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe and click all of the. Now, I'll ask people to do that, but I'll make it very clear. Like, look, I don't ask for likes every video, but this one is promoting a charity, or this one is promoting these mugs we made together. And like, it would be cool if you all interacted, because this helps me do the thing where I don't have to do the thing all the time. So there's a fine balance there.
Okay, so that's how to start.
Yeah.
What keeps you going? Like, why are
Oh,
you still
other
making these
people.
videos?
Other people. Here's here's the advice that I wish I could have given myself 3 years ago. It is incredibly scary to put yourself out there. It is even scarier to bring someone else in. Will, I'll use you as an example, because I've still been doing this for 3 years, and I'm still like, all right, clearly there's a partnership here. This guy is super talented and likes Lord of the Rings, and like being able to figure out like, okay, all of these things that I have been doing solo could potentially be in collaboration with someone else. And what that does is it keeps you sort of growing. You can have a brand, you can have a person, but I think if I had spent my entire time doing these TikToks, if I had spent every day in my bedroom and not reaching out to my mutuals to have them on Twitch streams or YouTube streams or duetting people or leaving comments on other people, like that's how I have sort of made the decision to keep this going, is because I have friends on the app, and I have friends outside of the app now that I didn't when I joined TikTok. And I do make it a point to go to cons even if I'm not invited, because I know that people will be there and I love hanging out with them. And I think that is the thing that I always want to stress, and I think I said it a little bit before. It is the community part of the creating that I do that makes this worth it. It is also the community, the creating within the community, that I have been so fortunate, and that is what keeps me going. Because if I was doing this alone, I would not be able to I think function as I do. You need that support system. You need other people to.
I've never ceased to be surprised by the internet's capability to connect people.
Especially if it's not like in LA with all of the stuff, like there's a certain level of polish that you just get with the good cameras and the live streams and the Twitch backgrounds where it's all like blue and it's like at that weird angle on the side. And it's weird to watch how video vlogging and like streaming has evolved. Yeah.
I'm excited for the new medium too. I think anime is going to be, it's going to have the potential to pull in a whole new crowd of people who wouldn't have come into Lord of the Rings anyways.
Really looking forward to it. I'm hoping they don't just like say, all right, it's live on Max. I want to see it in theaters. I want to sit down with my popcorn bucket. I want it to be an event. Yeah, and I really hope that we get a little bit more of like the fantasy folks over on like, Vinland Saga, ReZero, Ancient Magus Bride, all of these sort of like fantastical stories that's like very heavily influenced by Tolkien, even if it wasn't directly. Come on over to the Lord of the Rings side of things. We've got this really cool fandom and we're all really nice. And like, yes, let's bring more people here and spread the love. I think I'm very much in the cool because we get more Lord of the Rings, which I think in most instances is a plus. And we get it in a new form that could potentially lead to other forms and that lead to there's so many different mediums of creativity and expression. I think we're limiting ourselves by saying no, only the movies. Like, let's let it breathe, let's let it grow. My top 5 are Violet Evergarden, Cowboy Bebop, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Attack on Titan, and Code Geass. So you can just put that clip on TikTok. It'll typically does very well. You can include this part too, because TikTok loves being called out.
I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think that's the biggest impact we've got, is encouraging other people to do things.
Yeah.
Like using fantasy to fuel actual reality. Like,
ooh, is that your tagline?
If we can talk about the things.
Is that your tagline? You should make that your tagline.
Our official tagline is craft your own story.
Oh, that's another
good using
one.
The fantasy to like fuel your reality in order to craft your own story. Do you want to be a creator talking about Lord of the Rings online? There's an option. Do you want to be a creator who makes Lord of the Rings coffee cups that inspire people? There's an option.
We've got an app for that.
Do you want to be some other wild thing?
Oh, I'm sure there's so many things that you can be out there that like we haven't even thought of in terms of content creation. I'm so excited to see what the future holds.
Noah.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think this is the big thing. The two big things. Every year we do the On This Day in Middle Earth calendar. Pre-orders for that are coming up in I want to say a month or two. So keep an eye out for those. And then for those who have been asking me, why didn't they just take the Eagles to Mordor? Or maybe you didn't ask me and you've just been wondering why. We are wrapping up the campaign within the sort of TTRPG, the Dungeons and Dragons esque world, if you will. We're wrapping up that storyline as sort of an alternate universe for this alternate reality of Lord of the Rings that I wrote, where they do take the Eagles to Mordor. We are coming to the end of our season 1 and that campaign. So if you are interested in that concept, you've got a lot of time to catch up, but we will be wrapping up probably in the next 3 or 4 months.
Very cool. Thanks so much, Don, for being here and for the opportunity to collaborate.
Yeah.
And for anybody watching, if you would
thank you so much for having me.
To get your own Obscure Lord of the Rings Facts mug, you can do so on Don Marshall's store, which is available. I think you can find the link through my link in bio or probably yours as well.
Yep, definitely. Beacons.ai/DonMarshall72. I'm definitely double fisting these in frame. My apologies. I was supposed to be off camera. Oh, but no, thank you for having me. And thanks for making such cool mugs. I really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. It was. All right. Okay. I'll talk to you later.